I probably would have gone, but I didn't know who he was.
But now it's Pete Yorn Day, so now you know.
It is Pete Yorn Day.
Pete Yorn Day.
Why should I care? Well, you really shouldn't.
So, hey, how's it going, everybody? My name's Jeremy Williams. I'm here, as always, with Mr. Tony Bain and Andy Red Hat Drew Newman.
Not for a long time.
Not for a long time. Not forever. Anyway, I only go with old nicknames, so whatever your current nickname is, it won't be that. Anthony, I don't know any nicknames for you. So, there you go. Today, we're going to be talking about an album that I don't think a lot of people have listened to. I mean, I guess some people have at least probably heard the lead single off this album, but it's Pete Yorn's Music for the Morning After. Came out in March of 2001, and I actually didn't hear it until January of 2002. My aunt gifted it to me as a birthday present, and this is sort of, music was in a weird phase. We were sort of exiting the era of jock jams and grunge rock, and we were entering into a weird thing where pop and rock music all just became the same thing, and we ended up with Imagine Dragons. But this is earlier than that.
So the mid 2000s when people didn't know what the hell they were doing anymore.
Well,
musically.
right, and so it all just ended up kind of. I think what happened is at some point in the early 2000s, a bunch of people graduated high school who all had the same musical influences, but decided they wanted to make very decidedly different bands. But then all the music sounded the same. So
I can see that, yeah.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because obviously I listened to a lot of the music in this era. This is sort of one of my high school albums. It was definitely in the visor CD holder in my Chevy Monte Carlo that I had.
You were probably wearing a visor while you were listening to this too.
I definitely had an Adidas golf visor for sure at this time,
Yeah.
So there was no way I wasn't at least wearing that.
I know I had one.
Oh, of course. So I think people probably, if you've heard anything off of this album, it was the lead single "Life on a Chain." So it hit number one in the USA, it was sort of like I think it's the AAA chart. So it's like the adult alternative. So your John Mayers and your Nora Joneses. Pete Yorn was the king for at least a couple weeks.
Cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I think my first introduction to Pete Yorn at all was Me, Myself, and Irene.
There you go.
And Strange Condition was part of that movie, and actually him doing the score to that movie got him the record deal to make this album.
That's what I heard.
He did the score?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He's an incredibly talented musician. He played most of the instruments on this record. There's a handful of bass.
I absolutely. He is one hell of an instrumentalist.
Mm-hmm. He really is. So I actually didn't know that until just recently when we were doing the research for this podcast. And it's so interesting that scoring like a weird, Fairly Brothers style comedy in the early 2000s would lead you to soft rock success. But here we are.
Well, yeah, I think in my research for this, I was reading that he kind of cut his teeth at a West Hollywood club called Largo, which is really famous for Elliott Smith, Fiona Apple, Ben Folds, all playing there, and being essentially discovered there, and then basically recruited to do a score for the movie. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely a right place, right time kind of thing. What I like too about this album is that there's a lot of variation in it. There's a lot of different sounds that come out of it. It's not really just one. It would be hard to put it into one genre of music, because it's a little bit singer-songwriter. It's a little bit kind of alternative rock, a little bit sensitive
I think
pop.
most of this could be played in most retail outlets and fit perfectly.
Yep, and that's actually why this album, songs on this album are all over pop, TV and movies. Between Strange Condition and Lose You. He's like 20 credits or something like that. It's
Damn.
on House. He's on. It's in an episode of Life on a Chains and 6 Feet Under. Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, very much so. There's for Nancy, which is actually another one of my favorite songs on the album that we'll talk about, was in the Daria movie. Is it College Yet?
There was a Daria movie?
There was. It was made for TV. It came out in 2002.
Oh, okay.
It was. I remember. It's when they were going to go off to college. Were you guys aware? I guess Anthony, you must have been. Andy, did you ever hear me jamming this in the car in high school?
If I did, I think I probably lumped it in with like any other acoustic or singer-songwriter stuff that wasn't Stephen Lynch or Dane Cook's Harmful of Swallowed.
Harmful of Swallowed.
Because we listened to that a lot.
Yeah, we did. We did.
So yeah, and also like just like I'm just gonna be completely upfront here. When it comes to musical tastes, I have a pretty narrow field of view and preference.
Sure.
I listen to what I listen to, and I like what I like, and I just want to preface this by saying that usually when I listen to stuff, it is very straightforward, and you know, you're typically like the artist informs you of y'all's effect on their current mindset up in here.
Right.
So
how out one might go, if it's going to be all out or just mildly. I see.
Up in here, as you know, established. But
Up
yeah,
in
this one really goes places, and I don't typically listen to a lot of songs about relationships, and if I do, I don't have some of the takeaways I've seen some people online have about Pete Yorn's music. But yeah, so I just want to say, if I'm ever off the mark on any of this stuff, that's why, because this is kind of outside of my wheelhouse, despite, you know, Jeremy and I being friends for as long as we have been.
So music is all subjective, art is all subjective, so you're allowed to feel however you want to feel about it. And honestly,
cool.
I actually came away feeling, I have different feelings about this album than I did initially, having taking a second more critical listen to it. And I don't think I like it any less. I just think it's different. It's different than I remember, I guess. Like, it affects me differently now. And so my feelings on it are different than when I listened to it back then.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, this was a year, 2001, where, quite frankly, I was in a different place mentally, where I was listening to The Strokes, As This Said, or the Gorillaz' first album, or White Blood Cells by the White Stripes, their third album. And so the singer-songwriter, I hadn't had my heart properly shattered to appreciate this album yet. And, you know, Pete Yorn being 26 when he put this out, you know, this is something that would have really communicated with me a little bit better during my college years. But I think Ryan Adams' Heartbreaker, which came out in 2000, was my version of this album that spoke to me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It has a similar vibe. And obviously Ryan Adams also plays most of his own instruments and writes all his own music too. So yeah, I definitely, and honestly, the production of it, this is a little bit slicker, I think, than that Ryan Adams album, which is pretty raw, but I love them both, obviously. But Heartbreaker is, I wouldn't have thought to compare the two, but there are probably a lot of similarities there as far as like how it would affect someone in that time.
Well, it's interesting reading some of the during the research of this album that Pete Yorn was really influenced by Wilco and Son Volt and the Smiths, and you can certainly hear those alt country influences. I enjoyed it. There's a few key tracks, like I think Black is probably a good mission statement for the album. Where,
I think For Nancy probably is another good one.
I have one note for Black, and that's Pete Yorn takes rejection alcoholically.
Yes.
He does.
Yes.
He really does.
Okay, cool. All right, I got that one.
Yep, got that one.
I read an article that I think summed it up pretty nicely for me. where it said Pete Yorn is trying to reconcile whether he's a hopeful or a hopeless romantic. And that pretty much summed up this album for me. But I will say there's 4 tracks that I really like on this album, and the rest I wasn't so wild about.
That's actually kind of how I've come away from it now. Because I think when I was young and listened to it, I really thought that I did. I was more into that sappy emotional shit because I was just like, it's just like an angsty emo teen, and so sad music was good, was just like mood, and so I was just like, yeah, I'm into this. But yeah, listening back to it, it's the upbeat tracks for the most part that stick with me, and songs like June and Just Another completely like kind of go by the wayside for me.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that too is I used to, back then I didn't play any instruments other than the drums, and so the only songs you could play drums to on this album were the kind of upbeat ones. The drums are understated in this. There a lot of pop albums, the drums are way up in front, but it's a lot more subdued on this.
For sure. Yeah, I think this definitely set the tone for singer-songwriter albums to come out after this. I think they're commercially, you can see a trend where that became much more accepted in the mainstream after this album.
Because I mean, very shortly thereafter, John Mayer made his break, and then he really kind of broke it wide open for the white guy guitar man, like sappy music guy, to really pop back in. You mentioned the Smiths and Wilco, and if you look at other bands that are influenced by those same bands, they made songs that sounded really similar around the same time. Like the song "Sleep Better," to me it sounds like if you took the first Snow Patrol record and Transatlanticism by Death Cab and just smashed them together. That's what that song sounds like to me. Like the guitar riff in the opening sounds just like a Ben Gibbard riff from like early Death Cab, and then the chorus is Snow Patrol all the way. Like, and obviously the songs that I'm referencing came out after this, so
because Final Straw was like the one album that I thought was in the same vein, which was like 2004.
2004, yep.
I thought that the message was a little redundant through these songs after a while, only because it's like, I'm really sad, I'm really lonely, like you heard that, right? Like I'm really sad, I'm really sad, I'm really lonely. She's gonna get lonely eventually, and she's gonna regret making me feel so lonely. You'll see.
You'll see. That's what Sleep Better is all about. Is like she's fucked all by herself. It's like, I don't know about that, Pete.
I feel like there's another one on there that's also like that.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Through my research, I came across a name that had a unique view of music for the morning after. A guy by the name of Herschel Quintron.
Quintron.
Does that ring any bells to you? So I was going down the rabbit holes, and I asked Andy to maybe have this queued up because I am a fan of the Urban Dictionary, and I stumbled across that they actually had a definition for music for the morning after. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share that with you. Andy, do you think you could help me out?
Yeah, bud. Hang tight.
Now, this is just one guy's opinion.
Okay.
Pete Yorn's debut album, lame people, usually chicks, listen to this morning after they lose their virginity. The title is very poignant, especially if it's a girl who didn't get laid until she was 20. Something about sore crotch, bloody sheets, and wuss rock all go together quite well. Why is this all one word? What a douche. Damn, put Morning After on. I just totally got nailed by some stranger who lives 2 floors down. By Herschel Quintron, December 29th, 2003.
Which I might add, Herschel Quintron is probably the pettiest of the Decepticons.
Right. Also, doing a little bit of research about Herschel Quintron and some of his other submissions. So he actually, on December 29th, 2003, he made a ton of submissions to Urban Dictionary, including Music for the Morning After. So he was on a tear.
I wonder if it was one of those things where like they weren't time stamping them until December 29th.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
His legacy came to
his entire legacy.
But I like the idea that he just woke up at like 12:01 a.m. December 29th, 2003, and he just said,
6 cups of coffee and went,
make language.
Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, and they just.
So here's the thing. So there are 16 definitions by Herschel Quintron on Urban Dictionary. The top definition is ass jack, and that is kicking someone directly in the asshole, perhaps so hard that the big toe gains insertion. The example is, I'll ass jack you to the moon. My foot will rupture your uterus.
Wow.
I just feel like Lee Greenwood's Proud to Be an American should be playing right now as we read these.
To be an American, where I ass jack your feet. I don't know.
Or did you mean the Hulk Hogan theme?
I am a real American, jacking the ass of every man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Jack for what's right. Jack for your life. I'm actually wearing a Macho Man Randy Savage shirt right now. So
nice.
Oh, yeah.
I wore an ACL T-shirt.
Nice.
I've been to one ACL ever. All of the T-shirts I have were because my mom volunteered there, and it just so happens that at this year's ACL, Pete Yorn was not there. So that's
Pete Yorn was in Austin though in February playing something with.
He played a thing.
Austin Pets Alive or something? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
I saw that. I was going to go, and then I had my old band booked a show that day, so it didn't work out.
I probably would have gone, but I didn't know who he was.
But now it's Pete Yorn Day, so now you know.
It is Pete Yorn Day.
Pete Yorn Day.
So I'm gonna get a little nerdy about music for a minute.
Now?
And,
no, dude, if you're not getting nerdy about music, why are we doing this?
So the song "Strange Condition" has one of the slickest key changes that I've ever heard. And it took the other day I was like, I don't think I've ever learned how to play this song. Life on a Chain I knew how to play, but it's like I'm gonna look this up, and I was in my head. I'm like, this song is in the key of G, and it is for the most part, but except for the opening part, it's actually in the key of A major. And it really slickly transitions to G major using a D chord, because I have my guitar, by the way. I'm going to demonstrate this. So in the key of A major, the 5 chord is a D major. And wait, in the key of G, the 5 chord is a D major. In the key of A, where we start, that's the 4 chord. So you don't even really notice when he switches, because he goes from playing all of this, there's that D. So when we finally switch, and then all of a sudden we switch over to we're back on the G. So you go from a B minor to an E major. Okay, so and also E major is also in the key of G. So now we're getting slick. So now we've switched to the key of G now. Send me the money, baby. Do not leave out the wage. And I never even noticed that it changed key, but it does. And you don't really know, because of all of the shared chords that he uses between those two key changes. And so a lot of songs, there's this very obvious modulation. I think like that song Hello by Adele is a good example of that. She modulates up a whole step. Well, in this you go down, but I think because you're going down, you don't feel it at all, because obviously that G major, all that stuff fits. So it's really slick. I just thought it was an interesting piece of songwriting from a musical standpoint, to do it that way? Because a lot of times people want to emphasize the key change, and he completely de-emphasizes it.
That's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I do admire the guitar playing, their instrumentation. When it comes to music like this, and it's kind of funny considering where he cut his teeth at Largo, but people like Ben Folds or Elliott Smith or Fiona Apple, like they all share that quality of instrumentation and arrangement, where I admire all of their music for that.
Well, every single one of them are actual, like the people you mentioned. Elliott Smith may be the least of the ones you mentioned, but especially Ben Folds and Fiona Apple, like they're straight composers, like they are, their ability to play music in any key, in any style, basically just rip it out. Like if you ever watch those, and either of those two play live, especially Ben Folds, is like, cool, I'll just play all the instruments and I'll just play whatever I feel like. I have that Ben's record on vinyl over there.
So is Ben Folds all 5 of the Ben Folds 5?
No.
Oh.
There's actually only 3 members of the Ben Folds 5. A hut. But he on his solo record that came out, and that was 2000 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On the Rock in the Suburbs record, he was basically the Ben Folds 20, I guess, because he played every single instrument on that album and composed the whole thing. So
Rob Thomas the hell out of it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know anything about music. I'm sorry. I'll let you guys keep going.
I like the idea of Rob Thomasing.
No,
we'll need to put that on Urban Dictionary. Sorry, go ahead.
Rob Thomas.
Rob Thomasing. Yeah. That's awesome.
That's what Rob Thomasing is doing a bunch of coke and getting fat, and then stopping doing coke and not being fat anymore.
While listening to Smooth on repeat.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Give me your heart, make it real.
Oh, let's forget about it. Bogey.
Booze.
Come on over.
Were you singing Christina Aguilera just now?
No. I said come on over. It's supposed to be Street Corner Symphony. I think it's called.
Oh, okay.
The only problem that I would have, and if you were to maybe get some people on a street corner right now, and you did a Pepsi challenge, and you happen to play 30 seconds of the Goo Goo Dolls and 30 seconds of some of these Pete Yorn songs, you might not be able to tell the difference. And that,
no.
So for Nancy, because it already is, I have the note Billy Corgan's Foo Fighters.
That's it. That's
you have
pretty
Anthony
much...
to thank for that, because I couldn't remember the name of 1979, and neither could my wife last night. So I was like, Anthony, I need to call and screech at you for a minute, and you need to tell me what song that is. And he managed to pull it off.
He went, hee ho hee ho ho, hee ho 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 ho, and I went, that sounds like Bob Dylan singing 1979 from Smashing Pumpkins.
He's like, there it is.
Yeah, got it.
Be glad it was that and not Bullet with Butterfly Wings. Screech that through the phone.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I was definitely able to relate it to some songs that I knew, and that was nice.
What is everyone's least favorite? Okay, we'll go favorite song and least favorite song. Anthony, you.
I would say Strange Condition is a great song.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the one that everyone's going to pick. Murray is probably one of my favorites.
Murray's good.
I was going to say that, honestly, and I'm not taking anything away from Pete Yorn, because obviously his legacy speaks for itself. But Strange Condition, Life on a Chain, Murray. I mean, I could probably... Is Losing You? I would say
Lose You, yeah.
Or Lose You. I would say I would take those tracks and I would scrap the rest.
Yeah.
But I like Black too. But again, it's the message has just been hammered home into my skull to where I can take it. I can take that for those songs, and then afterward, I admire the instrumentation and the arrangements, but the messages of the song have been quite clear through the rest of the record.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. Like I said, listening to it back then, I didn't really understand most of what he was talking about, so I just knew that he was like sad about girls, and I was sad about girls, so that kind of tracked for me. But yeah, Life on a Chain, Strange Condition. I think I actually like Closet. Okay.
Except for the beginning when he's like, "This is a song
Called
Closet."
Closet. I hate that part. But that feels very like it has kind of a Sonic Youthy vibe in the beginning. Like it's just a bunch of noise and like echo and shit. And it's like,
I
all
just
right,
appreciated him being that straightforward in one of his songs.
yeah,
Like, can you imagine just a slow turn? This is a song called Closet.
And I actually do like the song Sleep better, but it's just because it reminds me of other bands that I like. It just sounds like a Coldplay / Snow Patrol song. I'm like, I can live with this. But
No,
yeah,
for sure.
everything else on it really, especially the song June, makes me want to kill myself. And I didn't like it back then either. That was always the skip, because it's a song that like it has no beat, it barely has a melody, and it's just like I don't know. It's really hard to. It's not a jam. It's not a jam at all.
My note for June is Pete Yorn is bad news, baby.
Yeah. Also, it's his over reliance on the term "baby" to reference whoever this girl that broke his heart was. Again, we get it, and
I mean, dude helped spearhead a genre, so that I guess you could let it slide, right?
It's fair, but it is a little bit condescending to whoever this woman is.
Well, I think it's interesting too. I mean, depending on which records filled that void for you, like we were talking about, Ryan Adams' Heartbreaker record or the early Snow Patrol records. I mean, depending on whatever you stumbled upon first, whenever you properly had your heart broken, that's going to be the definitive album for you. And I think had I might have heard this first during those times, I might be talking about this a little bit differently.
I think for me, this record opened up the door for other artists like this, which is, I think, is sort of the idea. Like that's sort of Pete Yorn's legacy, is spearheading this sort of genre for the next 10 years or whatever. But ultimately, I think this one ended up getting less play once I really did start experiencing that like real teenage angst and heartbreak, and the music that came out a couple years later that I listened to as a result of Pete Yorn. There was a artist called Aqualung who had a album come out called Strange and Beautiful. I think it came out in 2004 and or maybe 2003. And I went back and listened to that recently, and that, to me, I think that was that quintessential album for me. If you want to talk about just like straight up, like I'm gonna listen to this and cry while I drive around because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah,
I think for me too, it's an interesting listen because it definitely feels like a time capsule, because obviously they don't make music. No one really makes music like this anymore, and or if they do, it doesn't sound like this. Obviously, there's definitely people still in their feelings with their music, but they're not expressing it this way sonically anymore.
There was just actually this past Saturday, they had an anniversary for Music for the Morning After where he played the whole album in its entirety via Zoom.
I watched some of the Zoom last night, actually.
And there's so many people that still clearly love the shit out of this album. I can totally see why him being at Largo, where somebody was like, yeah, he needs to put music out. Like, we need to give this dude a deal. It's pretty clear that he's got great talent. And I will say, during the research of this, listening to some later stuff that I wasn't familiar with, it's clear that he's grown as a songwriter since this album. And I've enjoyed a lot of the things that I've heard post Music for the Morning After.
Well, the subsequent
even more than this.
The subsequent two albums that came out, he sort of, you can actually hear, because the content of his music actually changes, because he goes from kind of being this like, it's almost like, and he even talks about his first three albums kind of being like a trilogy, but it sort of is like the stages of grief a little bit. Like this first album is like those first early stages, like denial and anger and all that stuff, and then it's sort of like getting over. The next album's kind of getting over those feelings and trying to like grow up and reasoning with like, okay, I've had some success, and like, what does that mean? And then the last album is a little bit, it almost gets to being a little bit more to the jaded side, and like being able to look back in more reflective. So it's interesting that he talks about those albums like they kind of are this big work. He was referencing the Star Wars trilogies, and he's like, I don't know if it's Star Wars, but it's definitely, I see he considers those to be kind of three parts of a more complete work.
I appreciate his levity and grounded viewpoint on how his music is not Star Wars.
Well,
I think it's great that he just progressed past I'm getting laid, but why am I still so sad?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seemed like he actually started to like lean into who Pete Yorn became. He's like, oh no, I am this guy, but like I don't have to be sad about it. I can be me and not like cry in my whiskey about it.
Mm-hmm.
There was an advantage to being a guy who liked this kind of music in that era too, because girls thought you were cool. Like, and it wasn't a put on, but throwing on, like, I still remember this popular girl that we went to high school with, this girl named Lindsay Brown. She was a track star and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she was one of the pretty girls. And she was in my AP English 3 class, and I was just like, I walked into class humming Rockin' the Suburbs. And I remember her being like, are you singing Ben Folds right now? And I was like, yes. And she was like, that's fucking awesome. And I was like, oh, you have layers, hot chick that I just assumed didn't want to talk to me ever. So I think that's because you had mentioned, you're the one that turned me on to Ben Folds in high school. And so I can credit you for some of my cooler music taste in that era, because otherwise it would have mostly just been, Coldplay and the Killers, I think. Which again, nothing wrong with that.
Not everybody our age wanted to hear the prettiest song about abortion, but that's what Ben Folds gave us.
He really did with Brick.
But I mean, it's hard to deny, good instrumentation, good arrangement, and the power of changing your mood through music, and whether you can relate to it through lyrical content, depending on how you're feeling and where you are in your life. I can see why this particular album would be so meaningful to people, because if they do have their heart shattered and they are unsure about what love means to them, like I can totally see how this could be comfort food in music form for them.
It's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. I can definitely see people attaching different meaning to different songs.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, again, is it weird that I'm like, I feel the need to overstate how respectful I'm trying to be?
Here's the thing. You're allowed to not like something that other people like, and you're not going to hurt my feelings because I didn't write the fucking music. So
thank God. Let me tell you about how much I hate Pete Yorn. No,
I want you to read your notes. That's all I want to hear now. Is I just want to hear you. We're going to go track by track, and I want to hear your notes. So starting with Life on a Chain, I want to hear your notes.
Okay, reminds me of Foo Fighters' The Pretender, but instead of picking up, it gets bundled with Windows Media Player.
Okay, and go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it feels like something you'd hear while watching like a cutesy road trip montage. I didn't know if it was about marriage. The fuck is he talking about? Songmeeting.com comment that really stood out to me was, if I don't come back, will you come get me? ? Fucker. No. That was it. And I was just like, man, someone took something away from this song.
Yeah, they did. Fuck face.
And I was just like, geez, man, people got feelings. So Strange Condition. Just as a general note at that point, I was like, Pete Yorn is cryptic, and I don't like that. Which again, it's not the genre I'm used to. I'm used to being beaten over the head with Thunderstruck, and yeah. Let's see. It was pretty. Let's see. Yeah, I pretty much had a bunch of facts listed out for it. I think it's about being hung up on someone while they are dating others. Just another. We're both misunderstood lone wolf, but we banged. So that's cool.
Yeah, maybe just your impressions are what I'm enjoying.
All right.
Like
Let's see.
that
Yeah.
like stuff like that. That's really funny.
Black was Pete Yorn takes rejection alcoholically, like I said.
Right.
Lose you is not lose yourself, more responsible. When I was listening to it, my wife came in the room and she said, "Are you listening to Minecraft music?" Which I was like, dude, I would totally play Minecraft to this.
Yeah.
It's pretty chill. But yeah, my impression was, or what I thought the message was, I want to bang other people because someone I loved wanted to bang other people.
Yeah, I think you're about right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
that is, you nailed it.
Yeah. For Nancy, because it already is, Billy Corgan's Foo Fighters.
Uh-huh.
Pete Yorn gets overlooked for a drunk driver, and then later I found out it was just he like I read up on it a little bit. Apparently he like thought of the tune in the shower, really wanted to write it about I think a Les Paul, and then he saw the name Nancy scrawled in the back of it and wrote for Nancy, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that because it was used guitar. So yeah, the message, like, that was a roller coaster. I was just, like, a little bit angry that there wasn't more to that, but also, you know, it's like, sure. And Murray, another general message was, is Pete Yorn the AC/DC of sad boy rock?
He may very well be.
Yeah, I wrote Life on a Chain, but about pursuing life as an artist and nobody gets his art.
Even though someone saw his art and went, you should be paid for this. Obviously, that song had already been written before he got the album, I suspect, but I
Yeah.
always think it's funny to hear people write music on hit albums about how no one likes their music.
Yeah, exactly. And the dude's, like, super talented.
You're right.
Like, yeah, he's singer, songwriter, composer as a motherfucker, and that's awesome. But yeah, and then for June, Pete Yorn is Bad News Baby, and then I stopped taking notes.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
But I will say this is the most in-depth I think I've ever gone on a single album in my life in terms of, like,
I don't know if I'm
trying to
sorry
look for something to talk about, because I don't ever talk about music because it's not that there's nothing to talk about, but I feel like I have nothing to really bring to the table on that as a non-musician and someone who does not go out of their way to pick up additional
Well, you
music.
brought a shitload to it. I'm just.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably brought more to it than either of us have, because all he can.
Yeah, you brought a guitar. I don't.
Okay, but I mean
top that.
that's just that. To be fair, that's cheating. I've been doing that since high school. I just bring a guitar with me, and it makes me seem more interesting.
That's
So
not nice.
Well, this album is good, but I will say that my overall takeaway is I've enjoyed these points that this album brings up from other people a little bit better.
I wholeheartedly agree.
This has been a fun discussion piece. I think so. Yeah.
So I guess the big question is, should you care?
Is that me?
No, I'm just posing it
in
generally.
general, yeah, that is.
I say yes because I didn't realize how important for the genre this album was, because not that many people I knew really listened to it. It's one of the things that my now wife and I bonded on pretty early in our relationship. We were just talking about, like, seminal albums in growing up in high school, and there were some pretty obvious ones that I think everybody had. Rush of Blood to the Head. She was a country music person too, so obviously she had some things that I wasn't as familiar with, but this one was on her list, and I was surprised by that because I think she was the first person that I had met other than, I think, maybe my aunt, who turned me on to it, that was like, oh yeah, I like that Pete Yorn album, not, oh, I've heard that Pete Yorn song. And so for me, I care for personal reasons, but also apparently historically it's more meaningful than I remembered.
I came into this fully ready to not care. I'm just gonna say that from the outset. Like, a guitar opened up, and there was a sad boy, and I was like, "Fuck, this is what we're talking about." I'm not gonna have nice things to say, but over the course of this conversation, you guys have made me care,
Nice.
which kind of incenses me, but like honestly, I didn't know about Pete Yorn until I had to ask Jeremy, I think 3 or 4 times, wait, what's this one going to be about? And I was like, oh yeah, music for the morning. Pete Yorn. I'm like, is he Icelandic? And
Pete Bjorn.
and you know, I started listening to it, and I was like, yeah, okay, this dude can throw down like instrumentally. Lyrically, not a fan. But
Yeah.
the dude can, you know, he can absolutely throw together a melody, and I respect that. And for that, I begrudgingly care. You know,
Begrudgingly care.
yeah,
I'm fine with that.
especially. I didn't know, yeah, that he was like the precursor to so many other things. I feel like would I have purchased Maroon 5 songs without Jane if he hadn't existed? I don't know. But I'm also, like I said, you know, X Gon Give It To You is also one of my favorite songs. So
What's that about?
uh
I'm kidding.
It's
there's a
about
man.
it's a man. He's D to the M to the X.
The rise and the fall of the Berlin Wall, surprisingly.
I care about this album for the legacy of it. I do love the key tracks that are on it. I am glad to revisit it because honestly, in the year 2000, when Me, Myself, and Irene came out, I was like, oh, that's a catchy tune by somebody that I don't know, which I arguably say about most Fairley Brothers movies.
Right.
You know, because they have some artists in there, like Shallow Hell had a few Phoenix songs before I was a huge Phoenix fan. And so they are always great at picking good up and coming artists to have as part of their scores. So it was fun to revisit this. But kind of to my point that I made earlier, I think that I do enjoy a few artists that have, quite frankly, made these points a little bit better. But given the fact that it opened the door for some things that I really like to exist, I do care. So Andy, I'm just curious. I just want to know, because you went through the same feelings, thoughts, and concerns in your life as we all did. And some people used an album like this to get through it. When you had your heart broken properly for the first time, what got you through it?
Oh God, I am deep as a puddle on this.
Puddle of mud, what'd you say?
No, I wish.
Everything's
Probably, yep.
This is what Pete Yorn is way better than that, at least.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna
Speaking
say
of-
I probably cried along to "Goodbye My Lover" in my car by James Blunt
Good.
a
There
couple
you
of
go.
times.
Honestly, Pete Yorn, there would be no James Blunt without Pete Yorn, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to blaze up a big James Blunt at all without
No.
No.
Roll up a fat James Blunt and just cry yourself to sleep.
God, I wish. I wish that were the story. Nope. There's that, and then like I gotta bounce back from this. Let's throw on some Maroon 5. Oh, cool! I found "Running with Scissors" by Weird Al in my car, and then my short attention span just kind of fixed everything.
Because then you're listening to Albuquerque and everything's good at that point.
Yeah, you're like, 12 minutes in. Kirky!
Said, hey,
Yeah,
L.
yeah.
We were making the same reference. Yeah, we got it.
No, that's great. I mean, but it just goes to show, depending on where you're at in your life, different things can speak to you. But thank you, Jeremy, for bringing this album up and letting me experience it, because I wouldn't have otherwise.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that, and yeah, you're welcome. And this has been one that's like it's been close to my heart for a long time. And like I said, listening back to it, I recognize why I liked it so much back then. But actually being able to give it a little bit more critical listen, I like it differently for different reasons. But like it's mostly to Andy's point that his ability to craft the song around the words is pretty excellent.
So I think we've taken away that we should all listen to Pete Yorn's catalog. We should appreciate the opinions of Herschel Quintron, and that there's a lot of great albums that, quite frankly, wouldn't be in the forefront had Pete Yorn not kicked ass. that one year in 2001. Thank you, Jeremy.
No, thank you.
Damn it.
Son of a bitch.
Now kiss.
I'm lonely.
Oh man, this burn.
What are these feelings?
I gotta go listen to Pete Yorn now.
We are currently on Instagram. Why Should I Care Pod is the tag. So follow that for updates on our inane ramblings about
Yeah.
pop culture and stoof.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Sony.
I'm Andy.
And you should care, because we care about you.
What the fuck? That was actually
Wow.
kind of okay.
Yeah, it was all right.